Hi, this is Luke Ziff from Crocker Farm Auction. I'm here with one of my favorite pieces of stoneware that we've handled in recent years. Check it out, it's this half-gallon stoneware jar, very simple stoneware jar, made in the English style, so just this cylindrical form with delicate rolled collar, and then an iron oxide rust dip with an incised Federal Eagle design on it. We'll be including it in our October 26, 2019 auction, and it's a completely new discovery of American stoneware. And I'll tell you why I love this piece so much. So back since, 2000, 2001, I've been researching Baltimore stoneware, and this is the style that was made in Baltimore before the Baltimore stoneware industry really became a thing. So if you know the history of Baltimore stoneware, really it was jump-started right around the War of 1812 with the arrival of Henry Remy from Manhattan to really jump-start the stoneware industry there. He was hired by a Baltimore merchant, William Myers, and they just made very high-quality stoneware from the beginning of the War of 1812, 13, 14, 15, and then really by like the late 18 teens, the Baltimore stoneware industry was the style center in the Mid-Atlantic region for American stoneware, and just a new style started there and then spread out up into Pennsylvania, down into Virginia. Baltimore stoneware was very well recognized as extremely high quality stoneware, much like Manhattan stoneware was a generation earlier. But before that time, what was made in Baltimore beginning in the 1790s, I think around 1794, was this type of Quaker style stoneware, English style stoneware. So the first potters in Baltimore were all Quakers from Harford County, which is to the northeast of Baltimore. And they made simple earthenware. But then in 1794, Thomas and Joel Morgan, along with Peter Perrine, opened the first stoneware manufactory in Baltimore, making this English style stoneware. And you would see this is kind of typical, just this kind of simple English style jar form with an iron oxide dip. You would see this throughout many regions that were making cheap stoneware, because see, this is just meant to be utilitarian. It's simply decorated because this rust solution, sometimes called hammer dust, iron oxide, was a small fraction of the price of cobalt oxide. So regions like in Baltimore, they were importing stoneware from Manhattan, from Connecticut, but then the local potters were making kind of a cheap substitute that were sold to just country merchants, local consumers that didn't really care about the look of the vessel. They made this English style stoneware. And so you would find that in archaeological contexts in places like Baltimore, like Alexandria, Virginia, like Richmond, Virginia. But then it doesn't really survive much above ground, because once the industry gets up to speed and becomes more of a high quality potting center, then people didn't really hang on to their cheap stoneware from the earliest years. And so really all you find, like I love studying shards, like my friend Chris Rao has excavated so many holes in Baltimore. I love seeing shards of just fragments of the earliest years, the first generation of Baltimore potters. There's some pieces in the Maryland Historical Society that's descended in the Perrine family that are iron oxide dipped. There are shards also at the Maryland Historical Society from that pottery in Harford County, Maryland, where all these potters came from making stoneware. But really you don't find it above ground. But what you do see is the influence of these Quaker potters then on the Germanic stoneware that does survive. So Baltimore, if you've heard me lecture on Baltimore stoneware, see, I say that it's kind of a Creole language of potting, because you see that mix of early simple Quaker style with the more elaborate Germanic style when Remy comes. And so you see very elaborate cobalt decorations, but often simple forms, this simple jar form. This is kind of the reverse of that. So I just can't believe, first of all, this jar was made, but second of all, that it survived above ground. So anyway, this is a simple form, simple iron oxide decoration, but then an elaborate and sized decoration on it. And if you see, it's a federal eagle, which if you followed the market for stoneware, incised federal eagles are really, some of the most, the best examples of early American stoneware have incised federal eagles. This is a very detailed eagle on a simple jar. And you can see, it's that early federal eagle, the type that you see on like Washington's inaugural button, on the earliest American currency, before the Great Seal became modified with a more robust eagle design. This was the first type of eagle design. And so it really could date to that first period of Baltimore stoneware production in the 1790s. It could also go up to, right shortly after Remy's appearance on the scene in Baltimore. So this could be a patriotic piece during the War of 1812, shortly after. But clearly these potters who are used to making just very simple pieces for local consumption were also aware that you could decorate a piece of stoneware, you can make it look good. And so they wanted to add decoration. And so it's a very, very artistically executed federal eagle. You can see the stripes with the dots in it, the feather detail, the eye, liberty in the banner. I mean, that's probably the coolest part of it. Or maybe the coolest part is that abstract flag in his talon. But it's just an extremely important document of early Baltimore stoneware. I can tell it's Baltimore from the clay color, from the iron oxide. Very, very typical of the types of shards, just in form and iron oxide that you see. Here's the bottom that you see in early Baltimore holes. But I mean, this is just incredible. It'll be great for a museum collection, great for an advanced private collection. It's just beautiful in its both mix of simplicity and extravagance at the same time, and we're thrilled to offer it in our October 26th Stoneware and Redware auction.